You hear the name Marco Polo, and what do you think of? Epic adventure, right? Exploring a huge unknown world. But what if I told you that behind that legendary name is one of history's biggest arguments?
So, who was he? The world's greatest explorer who spent 17 years with Kublai Khan himself? Or was he its biggest fraud? Did he make the whole thing up? We're going to get into it because the answer here, well, it tells us a lot more than just about one guy. It's about how we even know what we know about the past.
All right, let's just get the basic story down first. So he's born in Venice. In 1271, he takes off for what they called Cathay, China. And get this, he doesn't come back until 1295. Do the math. That is 24 years on the road, an entire lifetime. And the story he tells, he dictates it from a prison cell. And that story, that book, it's going to change everything.
Okay, so let's start with the case against him. The big question, did he even go? For centuries, people have been poking holes in his story, and honestly, they've got some pretty strong arguments. Let's look at the evidence the skeptics bring to the table.
First up, it's what he doesn't talk about. I mean, think about it. You spend almost 2 decades in China, and you forget to mention the Great Wall? Really? Or how about tea, the national drink? Or foot binding, this really distinct cultural practice? He doesn't even mention the Chinese characters, the writing system. These aren't just little details you'd forget. They're kind of the whole deal.
But here's what might be the biggest piece of evidence against him. Polo claimed he was a big shot, right? A trusted advisor, even the governor of a major city. Well, the Chinese at the time kept incredible records, like unbelievably detailed. And guess whose name is nowhere to be found? Yep, Marco Polo. Not a single mention. For the doubters, that's pretty much case closed.
But wait, that's just one side of the argument. Now let's look at the evidence for him. Because the things he did write about, some of them are so specific, so unbelievably accurate, there's just no way you could fake them back then.
Okay, to get this, you have to put yourself in the shoes of a 13th century European. For them, money was something you could hold. Gold, silver, heavy stuff. But in China, the Mongol Empire was running on paper, fiat currency, a concept that would have been totally bonkers to anyone from Venice.
And this is where Polo's account gets wild. He doesn't just say, hey, they use paper for money. He describes how it's made, from the bark of mulberry trees. And even more amazing, he gets the economics behind it. He explains that Kublai Khan basically controls all the wealth in his empire with this system. That's not a tourist observation, that's inside knowledge.
Then there's this. He's talking about the Mongols' postal system, which was basically the internet of its day. And he drops this number, 300,000 horses. 300,000 at 10,000 different relay stations. Again, that's not just a cool story. That's hardcore logistical data about how the biggest empire in the world actually worked.
And the list just keeps going. He talks about black stones that burn. What's that? It's coal. He mentions a cloth that won't catch fire, which we now know as asbestos. He even gets down to super specific regional details, like how in Yunnan province they use tiny cowrie shells as currency. There's just no way you could have known all that sitting in a trading post somewhere in Persia. You had to have been there.
So what is going on here? How can you miss something as huge as the Great Wall, but then nail the economic policy of the Yuan Dynasty? It feels like a total contradiction, right? Well, the key to solving this whole mystery lies in how the book was actually written.
And here it is, the big twist. Marco Polo didn't write his book. See, he got captured in a battle, thrown in prison, and he told his story to his cellmate. And who was this cellmate? A guy named Rustichello the Pisa. And Rustichello wasn't a merchant or an explorer. He was a professional writer of heroic, epic adventure stories.
And suddenly, it all makes sense. You've got these two authors in one book. You have Marco Polo, the merchant, who's all about the facts, trade routes, exchange rates, resources, infrastructure, the real nitty-gritty data. And then you have Rustichello, the storyteller, who's thinking, how do we sell this thing? So he adds the exciting stuff, the heroic battles, the marvels. You probably even beefs up Polo's title to governor to make him sound more important. This partnership is why the book is so weird. It's both incredibly accurate and full of tall tales. So yeah, the book is this strange mix of fact and fiction. But here's the crazy part. In the end, it didn't even matter that it wasn't a perfect historical document, because the real information buried inside, that was pure gold. And it was about to kickstart a whole new chapter for the entire world. Think about maps of Asia before Marco Polo. They were filled with monsters, imaginary kingdoms. Basically, it was fantasyland. But after his book comes out, map makers start taking his data, his very real commercial data, and putting it on their maps. All of a sudden, Asia isn't a myth anymore. It's a real place with real cities, real trade routes, and a ton of wealth. It became a target.
And if you want the ultimate proof of his impact, look no further than Christopher Columbus. We actually have his personal copy of Marco Polo's book, and it's filled with his notes in the margins. And what did he care about? What did he underline? Not the fantastic stories. No. He was all over the parts about gold, gems, and spices. He was highlighting details about ships, winds, and ocean currents. This was his homework.
So let's be super clear about this. Columbus wasn't reading the travels of Marco Polo for entertainment. For him, it was a strategic manual. It was a business plan. It was the intelligence report that gave him the confidence to sail west. Marco Polo's book, flaws and all, was the blueprint for the age of discovery.
So, in the end, the story of Marco Polo's book is a messy one. It's a blend of hard data and good old-fashioned storytelling. But it shows you that sometimes a story doesn't have to be perfect to change the world. And that really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other imperfect stories are out there? Stories that we might dismiss, that have secretly shaped the world we know today.